Some fortunes are built with blood, sweat, and silent tears that the world never sees. Today, we uncover the staggering wealth that Céline Dion has amassed, over $800 million, but more importantly, we reveal why her family weeps when they see it. This isn't a story about money. It's about the crushing price one woman paid to build an empire, and the heartbreaking sacrifices hidden behind every dollar she earned. What you're about to discover will change how you see the woman whose voice became the soundtrack to millions of lives. Because behind the glittering stages and standing ovations lies a truth so profound, so deeply moving, that it will leave you questioning what success really costs. Picture this: March 30th, 1968, Charlemagne, Quebec. A baby girl enters the world as the 14th child in a family so poor that her first bed wasn't even a crib. It was a drawer, carefully lined with whatever blankets they could find. This was Céline Marie Claudette Dion's introduction to life, where love was abundant, but money was a luxury they couldn't afford. The winters were brutal in their small home, with walls so thin that the cold seemed to seep into their bones. Hand-me-down clothes passed from sibling to sibling, and some nights the hollow ache of hunger was as familiar as the sound of music that constantly filled their cramped quarters. But it was precisely this music, born from struggle, nurtured by necessity, that would become young Céline's salvation. Her parents weren't just dreamers, they were performers who understood that music could be a lifeline when everything else failed. The house echoed with the sound of her older siblings rehearsing, their voices weaving together in harmonies that made the poverty bearable. For little Celine, singing wasn't just entertainment. It was the family business, their ticket to survival. At 5 years old, she stood before a crowd at her brother's wedding, her tiny voice carrying a strength that seemed impossible for someone so small. By 12, she had already penned her first song alongside her mother, pouring her young heart into lyrics that spoke of dreams bigger than their circumstances. With her brother Michel's help, they recorded a demo on a simple cassette tape, a recording that would change everything. That worn cassette found its way to René Angelil, a music manager in Montreal whose life was about to be transformed. When he pressed play and heard Céline's voice floating through his speakers, witnesses say he wept openly. "This is the voice of an angel," he reportedly whispered, and in that moment he made a decision that defied all business logic. He mortgaged his own house to fund her first album. This wasn't just a business investment. It was an act of pure faith that would bind their destinies forever. The birth of a legend. By 1982, at just 14 years old, Céline stood on one of the world's biggest stages at the Yamaha World Popular Song Festival in Tokyo. More than 100 million television viewers watched as this young French-Canadian girl delivered a performance that would announce her arrival to the global music scene. She didn't just participate, she conquered, winning the competition and capturing hearts across continents. But victory came with a price that no teenager should have to pay. Years later, in her own words, she would reflect on this period with a mixture of pride and profound sadness. "I never experienced what it meant to be a teenager. Prom nights, first dates, lazy summer afternoons with friends, these were foreign concepts to me. Instead, my memories are filled with microphones, costume changes, and the harsh reality of 5 a.m. sound checks." While her classmates were discovering themselves through typical teenage experiences, Céline was learning English phonetically, syllable by painstaking syllable. She rehearsed until her voice was hoarse, carrying not just her own dreams, but the desperate hopes of her entire family. Fame wasn't a choice she made. It was a responsibility thrust upon her young shoulders, the only path that could lift her loved ones from the poverty that had defined their existence. Breaking through every barrier, the early 1990s marked Céline's boldest gamble yet, her assault on the English-speaking market. Industry executives were skeptical, critics were harsh, and many openly questioned whether a French singer with a thick accent could ever succeed in American pop music. The obstacles seemed insurmountable, but Celine possessed something that couldn't be taught or bought: an unbreakable determination. She approached English like a student preparing for the most important exam of her life, studying every syllable, every inflection, until the language bent to her will. Her 1990 album Unison marked her official English debut, and slowly but surely the walls of resistance began to crumble. The breakthrough came in 1992 with Beauty and the Beast, a duet that didn't just win an Academy Award. It established Celine as an artist who could transcend linguistic barriers and touch souls regardless of the language they spoke. From that moment, she became an unstoppable force, each album building on the last, each award cementing her place in music history. Then came 1997, and the cultural phenomenon that was titanic. My Heart Will Go On wasn't merely a movie theme. It became a global anthem of love, loss, and endurance. The single sold over 30 million copies worldwide, earning her an Academy Award and multiple Grammys. But more than the accolades, it gave her something priceless: a voice that could heal. Millions found solace in her trembling vocals, using her song to grieve, to remember, and ultimately to heal. Yet even at the pinnacle of her success, shadows were gathering. The world saw the glamorous gowns and Grammy victories, but they couldn't see the exhaustion etched into her face after endless tours, the migraines that pulsed behind her radiant smile, or the growing distance from the family she was working so desperately to support. Redefining entertainment itself. In 2003, Celine made a move that industry critics dismissed as career suicide. She accepted a Las Vegas residency at Caesar's Palace. The entertainment establishment mocked the decision, viewing Vegas as where careers went to die. Instead, Celine transformed the entire concept of what live entertainment could be. Over the course of her residency, she performed more than 700 shows, generating over $600 million in revenue and attracting more than 3 million fans from around the globe. Each night, audiences left feeling as though they had witnessed something transformative. Not just a concert, but a healing experience delivered through the power of her voice. But behind the standing ovations and sold-out shows, Celine was already fighting battles the public couldn't see. Her body, pushed to its absolute limits by decades of relentless performance, was beginning to send warning signals. Every flawless note delivered on stage came at a cost, and backstage she was starting to feel the weight of a body that could no longer keep pace with the demands of her extraordinary career. A love story for the ages. While the world knew Celine for her voice, her private life was defined by one extraordinary relationship: her bond with René Angelil. Their connection began when she was just 12, a shy, awkward girl with crooked teeth and a voice that moved him to tears. Initially, he was simply her manager, her shield against an industry that could be ruthless and unforgiving. But as the years passed, their professional relationship blossomed into something deeper and more profound. By the time Celine was 19, she had fallen completely in love with René. Their romance faced harsh judgment due to their 26-year age difference. But for Celine, it was a love built on the strongest possible foundation: mutual respect, unwavering loyalty, and shared dreams. Their December 1994 wedding at Montreal's Notre Dame Basilica was broadcast live across Canada, watched by millions who had followed their unlikely love story. For Celine, walking down that aisle wasn't just about marrying the man she loved. It was about honoring the person who had risked everything to believe in her when no one else would. Their marriage became her sanctuary in the storm of stardom. René was simultaneously her manager, her closest confidant, her protector, and eventually the father of her children. When she sang about love on stage, it wasn't mere performance. It was testimony to a relationship that had sustained her through every triumph and challenge. But fate, as it often does, had other plans. When everything falls apart, In 1999, the foundation of Celine's world began to crack when Renee was diagnosed with throat cancer. Without hesitation, she stepped away from the stage for 2 full years, dedicating herself completely to nursing the man who had always been her strength through his surgeries and grueling radiation treatments. The roles had reversed, and now it was her turn to be the protector. Renee's recovery offered hope, but it was temporary. In 2013, the cancer returned with a vengeance, more aggressive and unforgiving than before. Once again, Celine put her career on hold, choosing love over fame, devotion over dollars. On January 14, 2016, after years of fighting, René Angelil lost his battle with cancer at the age of 73. But grief wasn't finished with Celine yet. Just 2 days later, on what would have been René's birthday, her older brother Daniel also succumbed to cancer at 59. In the span of 48 devastating hours, she lost both her husband and her brother, 2 pillars that had supported her entire world. When she walked into Notre Dame Basilica once more for René's funeral, every step must have felt like walking through broken glass. The same aisle where she had once floated as a radiant bride now stretched before her as a path of unimaginable sorrow. From that moment forward, every song she performed carried the weight of absence, every note haunted by the silence where René's encouraging voice used to whisper. The mother behind the icon. For all her musical achievements, Celine's greatest dream was never about stages or studios. It was about motherhood. Growing up as one of 14 children, she yearned to recreate that sense of warmth and belonging, to build the family she had always envisioned. But nature had other plans. After marrying René, she began trying to conceive, only to face years of heartbreaking disappointment. Month after month brought nothing but empty hopes and crushing sadness. She turned to in vitro fertilization, subjecting herself to countless injections, surgeries, and procedures that left her body bruised and her spirit tested. She later revealed that her stomach was covered in bruises from the fertility needles, but still she persevered. After 6 years of failed attempts and shattered dreams, her miracle finally arrived. In January 2001, René Charles was born, and Celine called him the most amazing reward of my life. But her journey to motherhood wasn't complete. Desperate to expand her family, she underwent 6 more cycles of IVF, enduring additional heartbreak and even suffering through a miscarriage. For someone who could command the attention of millions on stage, these private battles fought in silence proved far more painful than any public criticism. Her persistence finally paid off. In October 2010, at the age of 42, she welcomed twin boys, Eddie and Nelson. Her joy was immeasurable, but it would be short-lived. Just as her twins turned 5, they lost their father, and Celine suddenly found herself navigating the impossible task of being both mother and father to 3 grieving children. In interviews, she confessed that her children became her reason for continuing when she wanted to surrender to despair. "I'm not really a singer," she told people. "My life is to be a mom." Even during her darkest nights, she focused on bedtime routines, lullabies, and creating stability for her boys. Behind every dazzling performance was a mother who had whispered prayers in hospital corridors, wept silently after miscarriages, and sacrificed her physical and emotional well-being for the chance to hold her children. Now, as she raises René Charles, Nelson, and Eddie alone, she sees not just her sons, but living proof of her refusal to give up on love. When the voice falls silent. For decades, Céline Dion's voice was described as a force of nature. Powerful, unwavering, capable of soaring above full orchestras and silencing entire stadiums with a single note. But behind closed doors, her body was already sending distress signals that she tried desperately to ignore. As early as 2005, she noticed strange stiffness in her muscles, spasms that made breathing more difficult during performances. Initially, she attributed these symptoms to fatigue, stress, or the common ailments that plague touring performers. The truth, however, was far more sinister. In 2012, she collapsed during a rehearsal and was diagnosed with weakened vocal cords. Doctors ordered complete vocal rest for nearly 2 months, a torture for someone whose voice was her identity. Then, in 2018, she revealed she was suffering from patulous eustachian tube, a rare ear condition that distorted her hearing and made singing nearly impossible. Surgery and postponed shows followed, but Celine's determination remained unbroken. She insisted on returning to the stage, refusing to let illness define or defeat her. However, by 2021, as she prepared for a new residency, her body's rebellion became impossible to ignore. Muscle spasms grew unbearable, forcing her to cancel shows and issue heartfelt apologies to devastated fans. The following year brought the revelation that changed everything. Celine had been diagnosed with stiff person syndrome, a rare neurological and autoimmune disease that affects approximately 1 in a million people. This cruel disorder causes violent muscle spasms, extreme stiffness, and eventually robs patients of their ability to walk, speak, and sing. In a devastating video message to fans in December of 2022, Celine's voice trembled as she admitted, "I've been dealing with problems with my health for a long time. It affects every aspect of my daily life." For the first time in her legendary career, she confessed she wasn't strong enough to perform, canceling her world tour and breaking the hearts of millions who had purchased tickets not just to hear her songs, but to feel her presence one final time. The images that followed were heartbreaking transformations. The radiant diva in shimmering gowns was replaced by a frail figure, often requiring assistance to walk. Her microphone was exchanged for walking aids, her effortless performances replaced by intensive therapy sessions. Yet even in her suffering, her spirit refused to surrender. "If I can't run, I'll walk. If I can't walk, I'll crawl. But I won't stop," she told fans. These weren't just words. They were a solemn vow of survival from a woman who had never learned how to quit. The Empire. Behind the tears. Through decades of relentless dedication, Céline Dion built a financial empire that few artists in history can match. Her estimated net worth today exceeds $800 million, a fortune earned not through shortcuts or scandals, but through unyielding discipline, countless sleepless nights, and a voice that became the heartbeat of generations. The numbers tell only part of the story. Over 250 million records sold worldwide, multiple Grammy Awards, and Las Vegas residencies that revolutionized the entertainment industry. But this wealth represents so much more than figures on a balance sheet. Her real estate portfolio once spanned continents. There was the $72 million Bahamian-inspired estate on Jupiter Island, Florida. A mansion so grand, it seemed like a palace. Her French chateau on a private island in Quebec, valued at $25.5 million, served as her family's sanctuary. The serene Nevada mansion, now worth $4.5 million, remains home to her children and holds their most precious memories. Her garage housed a collection worthy of royalty: a Maybach 62, a Mercedes-Benz S350, and a Cadillac Escalade. She even owned a $42 million Bombardier Global Express jet that carried her between tours, recording studios, and the quiet refuges where she sought solace during her darkest moments. But to her family, none of these material possessions shine as brightly as the sacrifices that built them. Every dollar in her fortune represents a show performed when her body ached, a tour continued after losing her husband, a note held steady through tears the audience never saw. Her children don't look at her wealth and see luxury. They see the woman who whispered lullabies in hospital rooms, who endured countless needles and surgeries to bring them into existence, who stood alone at funerals, and who continues fighting even as her body betrays her. The true measure of a fortune. Celine's real fortune cannot be measured in dollars or counted in assets. It lives in the love she poured into every relationship, the resilience she demonstrated through every tragedy, and the music that will continue touching hearts long after we're all gone. Today, as her family stands quietly before this immense legacy, their tears aren't for the money she's leaving behind. They're for the woman who created it all. They cry for Céline Dion, the mother, the widow, the daughter, the artist who gave everything she possessed so the world could believe in love just a little longer. Her story transcends fame and fortune. It's about the true cost of carrying both. Her family now holds not just her wealth, but her pain, her sacrifices, and her unbreakable spirit in their hands. Céline Dion's legacy reminds us that some fortunes are built with more than ambition. They're built with pieces of the soul, paid for with tears that sparkle more brightly than any diamond, and measured not in what we accumulate, but in what we're willing to give away for love. Which of Céline's songs has touched your life most deeply? Share your memories in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more untold stories of the legends who shaped our world.